and welcome back to another GOAT show. I'm the host, Jeff Miner, and the GOAT is a show where we kind of talk about what it takes to be great. And we talk about different challenges and things and that you overcome when you have the mind of a champion and when you want to be great at something. And I just want to talk a little bit about last week's show. What a great show. We had Mike Kenny from Warriors Ascent. It was awesome. He talks about how he helps first responders, and he has a program that serves first responders and people that are struggling who have protected our country and who have protected us. And we had Abraham Cisse, who is the Freedom Project, who is the director of the Freedom Project. He's a close friend of mine. And Miss Kimberly William also knows who he is. She's been part of a documentary that he's been filming. That's where we met. And I'm so excited to have our guest on tonight. It's Kim Williamson, and she is a GOAT. She is everything that a GOAT is supposed to be. You know, I've got this history that I can go through of all the accomplishments that she's made. I'm going to have to let her do that because I tried to remember them all and I can't. Kim, tell us a little bit about you and what you have done.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Well,
But
first,
my name is
let's go with tell us a little bit about you, and then we're going to go into your history and
okay.
So just a little bit about you now.
A little bit. Let me see how I can summarize this. I was born and raised in Jamaica. I started track and field at a I wouldn't say very young compared to most Jamaicans. But I started track and field, and it quickly became my way out of the life that I was living, out of my childhood, and some of the things that I struggled with. So yes, I'm a high jumper, and I'm currently training for the Olympics.
Right.
So that is really exciting.
I know exactly. You're
Yeah,
going to qualify right now. You're in the process of qualifying.
yeah, I'm in the qualification period. I start competing in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Ooh,
As soon as our country go back to some normalcy, we're in a holiday period right now, so everything is pretty much shut down.
right.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Now you
But
what is that like for you to you're looking at trying to train and get ready for the Olympics and
yeah,
not being able to train fully like you could.
yeah, it's been challenging. For the most part, training wasn't being affected. It's the competitions. At first, the government was delaying opening up for us to compete because they were concerned about the spread in with the virus and all of that. But then they gave us the go ahead. But then
Right.
they gave us the go ahead, and we were okay for about 5 weeks. And then I think like 2 weeks ago, they were like, okay, we're shutting the country down again. So we are in that phase right now. We have all day curfew until Tuesday. So we have to be
Wow.
doing homework, pretty much home workouts until then. But yeah, it's challenging. I'm not going to lie. It's
Right.
hard to stay motivated, especially during a time like this. Seeing the rest of the world competing, and you're like,
Right.
am I going to compete? Like,
Uh,
but at the same time, I'm trying not to focus on that because that is out of my control. So
right.
I'm focusing on what I can control, which is training and ensuring that I am ready for when I do compete.
I love that. I That's the mind of a goat, the mind of a champion. So I want to talk a little bit about you growing up. What was growing up like for you? And you're in Jamaica and you said parts of it were really tough. There was good times. Tell us about what growing up in Jamaica was like for you.
Honestly, for the most part, it was fun until tragedy hits. And then when tragedy hits, it's like a
Right.
it was just like everything is good. And then you just got hit by a truck and everything just blows up. But growing up, we did not have a lot. And I keep telling a lot of my friends in the States that the things that they complain about, we see as luxury. I grew up in a one-bedroom house that was literally the size of my room in
Right.
our apartment when I went to college. And I'm like, so it, yeah, so then that's what I grew up with. And it was me at the time. I had, it was five of us. I had
Oh,
a
wow.
older sister, older brother, and I was in the middle. And it was five of us in a small, like literally a college dorm room. And that's
Wow.
what I grew up with. And at that time, like we didn't know anything.
Yeah,
And
that was
for us,
normal.
yeah, that was normal until I
Right.
started seeing movies and shows.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, we are poor, poor. But
Right.
we were happy. We
Ooh.
never, we were happy because
Yeah.
that was all we knew. And we were happy and content with it. And
Right.
then when I was about 9 years old, um, yeah, I was about 9 years old, 9, 10 years old in that range. When me and my older brother and one of our neighbors, we were on our way to school when my brother got hit and killed by a drunk driver, and
Oh,
that
wow.
was the start of my train wreck.
You were 9
Witnessing the
years old. And did
yes.
you see it?
I saw it and I was 10 years old. I remember because my birthday had just passed. I was turning 10 because it happened in like September, couple weeks after school started. And my
Oh,
birthday is like the start of October. So that period for me have always been my
oh,
most depressed ever since that incident.
I can
So
imagine.
yeah, we were on our way to school when he got hit and killed by a drunk driver. And it was trauma. Like I was traumatized and I
Yeah.
didn't even know what to do. I kept walking to school and
Right.
I went to school like nothing happened.
Wow.
Even after they took him to the hospital, I went to school like nothing happened. And it was when the news got to the principal that they pulled me out of class, and I was still in shock. Like I
Right.
wasn't practicing what had happened. And after that, it was really the start of
Oh,
something because after his death, he got buried, and it's like we moved on with our life. We did not get any counseling, we did not get any
right.
help, anything. And
You guys
that
talk
was,
about it? Like, talk
we
about
did not talk about it like with nobody. It's
it was
like
just
part of
gone.
Yes, it's like a part of our culture here in Jamaica, and I feel like it's a part of our culture that needs to change
Yeah.
because we see traumatic events, and it's like we get so numb to it that we don't really see how it affects
The
kids or how it affects us in general. Like we
right.
just suppress things, and I feel like that's a part of the culture that needs to change.
Right.
That happened when I was 10 years old, and I still, even in my teenage years, I would wake up crying because I was still seeing that and I was still hurt and I never dealt with it properly.
Kim,
And
you know,
after,
that's a great question that you just said. I never dealt with it properly. What do you think that is? What is dealing with it properly?
dealing with it properly is talking about it, getting help, being like going to counseling because at that time we had school counselor, but it was never something that I'm like, I don't even know why that did not occur to them
Right?
that maybe she needs help. She just
Oh
saw her
boy.
brother died. Like,
Oh,
but
oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that happened and I had to just suppress that and move on. I didn't deal with
Right.
it. And then it wasn't that long after, about a year later, that I was abused, sexually molested by a family.
So you're
He's
dealing
not
with
really a family member.
let me state this first. So first you were dealing with this, you didn't know how to deal with it. So everybody in the family just tucked it. So you're a 10-year-old kid trying to figure out these emotions that are going on inside and everything that's happening with, oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
And you're alone with all this. And then what happened?
Yes, I know it's a lot, and I'm smiling about it now because I've actually been able to
Right.
de deal with that
You're healing.
through a lot of counseling,
Oh
like
boy.
a lot of counseling.
I love
But yeah, so that happened, and it continued for a couple of years.
uh,
I think I was like 14 or 15 when my mom and others found out. But then I thought it was going to end, but then I was
right.
blamed for it. Like, and that part hurt the most. Like, I feel like the death of my brother, the trauma of the abuse was nothing compared to not being believed,
Right.
and being blamed. So I
Exactly.
feel like that for me was the
So that's
most
what
challenging part. And
the family and people in your community didn't believe that that
yeah,
happened. Oh man.
they thought it was my fault, like I wanted it. So I was blamed for ruining a marriage, and I'm like,
Uh,
I'm a child.
you're
But at the time, I wasn't thinking about it like that because I thought it was my fault too.
right.
But it wasn't until, and that that for me was traumatizing.
Oh, you know
And
what that, I know what that happens. I know you know what that happens, but the guilt and shame that you have about that, not just because it happened to you, but then nobody's believing you and blaming you.
yeah,
And you had nobody to talk to.
yep, it was rough. I had several. I For the most part of my teenage years, I feel like I never got to be a teenager because I was forced to grow up so fast,
Oh,
to deal with everything that I was going through. And it really got worse when I got to college because with the additional pressure of trying to being a first generation college student, I was the first in my family to go to college, and having that pressure of trying to prove everyone wrong because growing
right.
up, there was a lot of people that were saying stuff about me like she
Yes.
is this or she is
Did this.
that. So,
This
yeah, there were constant negative talks about how is she not pregnant. I'm like,
uh,
how? But just there was just so many negative thoughts and so many negative things going on in my environment that it really took a toll on me when I got to college. So I felt like there was that additional pressure that I needed to do well.
right.
I
Yeah.
needed
All this
excellence.
pressure. I have to do well. And how PTSD, what happened to you, both those situations cause PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And so how that manifests is it manifests in anxiety and pressure and guilt and shame and all these things that you don't get to feel good about you, but you were able to do something that is amazing to me.
It really did. And it was, it really hit me that I needed to get help when I realized that, hey, like you've suppressed everything, but it is still there. Like
Right,
you
right.
were still like you didn't deal with it. It is still there.
But you
And when
were
I,
able to do something to get through that.
yep,
It was amazing. That's when
yeah,
you used your sport and
yes.
your
So I
as
started track and field because I didn't want it to be at home. I am not like if you knew me or if you know anything about track and field in Jamaica, I was never a talented athlete.
mhm,
Like I grew up, I had asthma, so I couldn't train with the rest of the kids.
right.
Like I had to take longer breaks and I didn't care. Like I just liked the environment. I was still going to training.
And you wanted to
Even
get
the,
out of the home environment that
yeah,
was happening so bad that
and
you
track
were
and field it was the perfect escape because I left home at 7:30 for school. Uh, School ended at 3 p.m. Track and field training started at 3 and ended at like 5. So by the time I get home, I am shower and bed and repeat. And then most weekends we were competing, so we would be out. So I literally was not spending a lot of time at home. And
That was
then,
your answer.
yep, so it was literally, it was
Yeah,
literally my escape. So when people hear me say that, I'm like, it's only if you knew the full story, then you would see why I say track and field is my escape.
right.
And as I said, I was not good at it, but I worked.
You
I
had
worked.
to. Yeah, it's
I
like my
did.
option.
And my high school coach has been a huge factor in me being where I am because he saw something in me that I didn't see myself. I was just doing track and field because it was an escape. But
Right.
then he was like, you can be one of the best high jumpers this country has ever seen. And I'm like, what are you seeing? Because I am not seeing it. And then I had a breakout year in 2009
Right.
where I made my first national team representing Jamaica at the World Youth Championships in Italy. And that
Right.
was my first time traveling, and it was then that I'm like, oh yeah, I can do something. Like, to
Yes.
represent your country is a huge deal. At a world event, it is even a bigger deal. And it
Oh,
was then, yeah, so it was then that I am like, okay, I can do this. Like, and I started training and being consistent because I'm like, okay, if I can make it to world championships, world youth championships, then schools are going to start looking at me. And I started getting that picture of what that would be like going to college in the States, like
right.
really escaping my
Talk to me
childhood.
throughout this time, like let's just say high school, end of high school, going to some games. How were you able to deal with the anxiety of the sport? Because you said it got worse as you got later in the game, and maybe even now. I don't even know where it's at now. We're not here yet. We haven't talked about that.
Yeah,
But let's go with through the high school. You were the molestation had stopped, and you were
yeah,
competing, and
yeah.
you were dealing with anxiety.
Yes, and my performance showed like I would be really good in training. But then as soon as I get on the international platform, I would crumble.
Right.
And it's hard because when people don't know your story,
Right.
they tend to talk like they can actually do what you do. So I would be training and training would be amazing, but as soon as I get to competition, I would get super anxious.
You got
And it would show because I would start my season really good, and by the time I get to a major championship, I wouldn't even finish and I wouldn't even make a final. And my coach and everyone around me and people in the media that follow track and field, they would talk down on me, and
sure.
because they would be like they were expecting this but they didn't get
Right.
it, and I'm just like, I
They
am trying, but I really don't know why. And it was always the case. Like, I would do good when it comes to the high school championships and all of that, but as soon as it gets to the international stage, I would literally crumble and underperform every time. And that continued for several years. And it wasn't until I went to K State, and now it's getting worse because I have the pressure of school, and
right.
I'm like, they made it seem like, okay, if you don't perform at colleges, they're going to cut your scholarship. So I feel like I
Right.
had to maintain that. So
Yes.
the pressure just felt like a lot. So when I got to K State, it was getting worse. Like, I would literally be at competition and the time would run out on me to jump. So
Wow.
when you're competing in the high jump, you have 3 minutes. No, sorry, you have 1 minute to jump, to
Right.
take your jump, or else it will be a no jump. It would be considered a no jump or a foul jump or whatever.
Right.
And the time would literally run out on me because I get so anxious that
Right.
I would be like shaking, and
So let me
So it,
tell you just briefly, from a psychological standpoint, what you were dealing with was you were living in fight, flight, or freeze because have you have been triggered. You have trauma. And so
yeah,
you have been put in fight, flight, or freeze. And so when you're
and I
going
would be freezing all the time.
right, you were freezing at that point, or you would fight, or we sabotage ourselves, or we drink, or we do all kinds of other
Yeah,
things, pressures on, because we still are dealing with that trauma. It hasn't
yeah.
been resolved yet. Yeah.
I
So
was freezing all the time. So when I got to K State, we had a sports psychologist. And at the time, K State was one of very few schools in the US NCAA system that had a sports psychologist. And at first, I'm like, coming from Jamaica, that is just not something that is very taboo. Like,
yeah,
you were raised to be independent, you were raised to be strong, like
right.
you saw anything mental health protection, you saw anything counseling therapy as just weak.
Right.
So when I went to K-State, it took me several months to work up the courage to
Oh,
go to Ian, who was our sports psychologist at the
right.
time. And I remember going to Ian, and he did this one exercise with me, and it was like a visualization exercise where he had me in this room, and I probably fell asleep. I don't even know.
Right.
But he had me in this room, low lights, and he was telling me that I should visualize jumping and calming myself down before, like when I go to training, just to practice, like being able to relax whenever I go to competition.
You
And I
bet.
remember trying that exercise, and it literally changed. It changed the entire game. My
Wow.
coach, yeah, my coach, before that, he was like, okay, whenever you know that you're the third jumper in line, you should get to your mark and start getting ready. That was my coach's technique.
Yeah.
My collegiate coach, that was his technique. So
Right.
I don't get too anxious and not jump and
Yeah.
miss my attempt. So it would be like, whenever there's like three jumpers ahead of you, go to your mark and start getting ready. That's
Right.
how long it took me to calm myself down to be able to
Right.
jump. But then when Ian gave me this technique and I started implementing it in training, it really changed the game for me.
Beautiful. I love
Like it,
that.
yeah, it literally changed the game, and it was, it was. I don't even know how to explain it. And then it was at that point that I'm like, okay, this really works. But I still never dealt with the trauma
Yes.
that I've been through. I'm like, I just need something to fix high jump. Like once
Right.
high jump is good, like I'm good.
That's
So
how
I
I
never,
do most of my clients, girls. They come in with, I just want to fix me in this sport. And then we go
yeah,
to, hey, do you realize you are way more than this sport? You are that's a piece of what you do, but you are such a huge person in so many different ways. You won the WOW award. You have overcome all these traumas. You faced your fears. You're
yeah,
what I call owning your shit, which is this is you're walking into your fears
yeah.
more than anybody that I have met in a long time. And I so much admire that, girl. It's like you are facing the fears. You've talked about some of the hardest things to talk about in public and in front of people. And from my standpoint and what I've seen in my life, it's the only way to truly overcome your fears is to walk into them. And you're
No,
walking into them.
I absolutely agree. But yeah, that really changed the game for me. And I was able to, but even though I still didn't deal with my trauma, I was fine. Like track and field started to go good because I
Right.
focused on that. So track and field was going good. So I was doing okay. I still had seasons of depression where whenever it comes to my brother's birthday or it came to the time that he passed away, I would just get really depressed and I would literally shut myself off. And I've lost friends over that because they're like, okay, I'm used to this person and I'm not used to this person. And like I literally lost, well, I wouldn't say they're friends, but I've lost people out of my life because of that. Because I would go through these episodes where I was just really sad and I was really hurt. And it even got to the point where I had suicidal thoughts. And I'm like, nah, this cannot be.
It's
And it was,
pressure, isn't it? It's like
yeah,
you're feeling the pressure from the country, from your college, from all this, and it's like all this pressure is on you.
yeah,
And
yeah. And
you are living with some PTSD stuff that hasn't been necessarily healed at that time, so you're not really being able to handle that pressure.
yep. And it was at that time that I'm like, no, this can't be like
Right.
we need to fix everything. So I reached out to my church. That's when I was living in Manhattan. And I'm like, okay, maybe if I just meet with this therapist and just tell all my problems, she's going to fix it and I'm going to be good. And that's literally, I kid you not,
Right.
that is literally what I did. My
Yeah.
first session, I told her everything. Like everything, for real. I was just going. I told her everything.
And I broke
And
my fingernail, and then I did this, and this happened
oh
to me.
no, I for real. I told her everything, all my problems, because I thought that's what therapy was like. I spill it and you fix it, and I'm good.
Right.
And I literally only went to 2 sessions. The first session where I told her everything, and she kept asking me questions, and I'm like, I already told you everything. Like,
Right.
fix me. So and it didn't work. So I stopped going. Because I'm like, and then but the funny thing is I studied counseling in college. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what? But I wasn't fully ready. I feel like what it was because I'm like, okay, I thought if I told you everything you would fix me and I'd be good. So I went to 2 sessions and I stopped going.
Right.
And but the problem was still there and I was just in college I drank. My friends called me a functioning alcoholic, but that was what I used. Like I would be at track meets and after I get done competing, me and one of my teammates, I'm not gonna call names, we
Right.
would find the closest liquor store. We would get liquor and we would go get pizza. I didn't eat pizza, but I would get wings. And we would go get wings and we would just drink and but that did not help. It literally just made it worse. My friends, I would come to Jamaica and I would literally only bring alcohol back to the States and they would get mad. And I'm like,
That was your
but
tool, though, at that time. That's what you had to deal with, and it helped you get through until you were ready to deal
yeah.
to really deal with it.
Yeah, but the alcohol did not work. It did not because then I just got used to it, and now I'm day drinking, and I'm like, yeah, that this is not going down the right path.
Right.
Uh,
Congratulations. That is so cool that you were able to stop yourself. And I got to look at all these people that are commenting on this.
yeah, that's what I'm laughing about. My friend said, "Don't call names," and I won't. I won't call names. But but no, that's literally what was happening because it was just so much. And I would literally just withdraw, and I would be at my friend's house, and I would just literally eat. I would be eating popcorn or whatever is close. And I would just because he traveled a lot. He's a professional athlete, and he would be gone a lot. So I would be at his house, just binge watching TV and eating junk food, and that did not help either. And honestly, I
So,
went through
Kim, look at
sorry,
that, though. That's what people do, and that's what you did to take care of you. It's what we know. I have
yeah,
turned to food big time. I have turned to alcohol big time at different points in my life, and we do that. But what is different is you're still competing as an Olympic athlete. you are you have you have been able to control that, all the trauma, all the stuff that you've dealt with. You are working on it, you're addressing it, and you're still
yeah,
so inspiring to me. It's like you've had all
yeah.
this happened to you and you are still in the game.
It made me wonder like how much further along I would have been if I had honestly dealt with it at a younger age and not bring it all the way into adulthood, because I never really dealt with it until last year, in 2020 when COVID hit. I was in Jamaica preparing for the Olympics, preparing for training and preparing for the Olympics. I was just about to start opening my season, start competing when the pandemic hits and the
Right.
country was shut down. So I had immediately, I pretty much got on the last flight out of Jamaica to the States because I'm like, even though my immediate family is here, all my friends are in the States or all over the world. So I got on the last flight out of Jamaica to the States, and when I got to the States, I feel like it really hit. Like I feel like that was rock bottom for me,
Yeah.
because when I got back, it was we had the killing of pretty much all the killing of the blacks. It just kind of kicked off like on
Boom.
a new high. And one of the things that was most challenging for me was seeing my friends that was not very supportive of, didn't even check in, like, how are you doing? How are you coping? Like,
Right.
anything like that. But then they were posting comments about Blue Life Matter or whatever. And I'm like, you were so quick to post about blue lives, but not about any of the black men or the black woman that was just killed. Like that
Yeah.
terrified me.
Right.
And for me,
That's a huge
that
trigger.
one, yes, that
Yeah.
hit hard.
Mhm.
And I was really at rock bottom. I was struggling, and at the time I did not have money to to see a therapist because I knew I
Right.
needed to talk to someone, and I
Right.
did not have that. And I reached out to my church, Transformation Church. I reached out to them, and that was like my last resort. I
Yeah.
reached out to them, and in really quiet desperation, like this was it. And
Yeah.
like about a week or so later, someone from the church had reached out to me, and when I got that phone call, I was literally in tears. It
Wow.
felt like just that phone call,
Yeah.
that they were responding to my email, just that phone call alone made me feel like the world was lifted off my
Right. There
shoulders.
was hope. Hope
Yes.
things might be better.
Yes.
That's
And at the end of that phone call, they had provided me with a therapist, prima donna, which really,
yay.
like, the first appointment, the first appointment with her, I was literally crying
Yeah.
because I felt so relieved.
Right.
Because when I say I was at rock bottom,
Yeah.
like I was drinking, I literally gained 30 pounds in
Wow.
probably a month or two. Like I kid you not. And
Wow.
it was
Yeah,
a rough
the
time. Like
dreams
I
were
am
gone. I mean, 30 pounds on a high jumper, you can't,
yes.
no.
Yeah, so I was struggling. I was like, because in the midst of all of that, I was like, how am I going to cope? How am I going to get through this? Because at this point, I had already quit my job for a year. So I was out of a job, and I'm like, going to the Olympics is the ultimate goal. And I didn't, but now the Olympics, there was this uncertainty. We didn't know if the Olympics was canceled, if it was postponed, like what was going on. And I'm like trying to figure out, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to still train for the Olympics? How am I going to do
Right.
this? How am I going? And then with the additional pressure of the social climate that we were in, and the political climate, it was a lot.
Perfect storm.
And
Yeah.
yes, and
Oh,
that first conversation with prima donna, it really helped. So I was seeing her like twice a week, and then we went to once a week, and that is really I would be lying. That that time with her this last summer literally changed my life.
Oh my.
Like I haven't even had a depression episode. Like I got some bored days, but
Yeah.
I haven't had that depression episode. Like I haven't even drank alcohol. Like I'm just like this
Congratulations.
is life changing because I haven't had
Wow.
that desire, that crave, because that was my escape.
Well, sign me up
And
with
I
this.
haven't
I want to
I
go.
will because prima donna, like
Donna,
she helped me so much to deal with what I was going through in a more positive way that it changed everything. I was able to drop that 30 pounds that I gained in like 2 months.
great.
Um, I everything changed.
Congratulations.
My yeah, I
You just
stopped worrying
got it
about
out.
finances. Like I just got relief. Like I just got peace.
Yes.
And I was able to get to a place, and it was funny because at the end of my session with Prima Donna was when literally not even a week later that you had reached out to me to do the mental health with Abraham. So
Oh yeah.
it was yeah, so it was crazy
The
that I was
timing.
yep, I finally got to a place where I can talk about because it was the first time
Wow.
um do filming that I was able to talk about my childhood without crying, like
Right.
bawling. It was the first time I was able to have that conversation. It was the first time that I was able to feel peace. Like I didn't feel hurt, I didn't feel guilt, I didn't feel shame, I didn't feel anything, but I felt peace to talk about what I went through and how I overcame it and sharing my story with others because I know how powerful stories can be.
Oh boy.
And you never know what other people are going through. And when um when I won the WOW award and I did the story and a lot of people saw it, they're like, why would you share that? I'm like, why would I not share that? Do you
Right.
know that 1 in 2 women in Jamaica,
Right.
1 in 2 women is being abused,
Wow.
sexually molested, 1 in 2.
Oh.
And that does not alarm you that
Oh wow.
how does that not alarm you? Because
Right.
it's so normalized here that kids are being abused and they're not talking about it because they're afraid that they're not going to be believed. They're afraid for their life because of threat. And I'm like, no, I am going to share my story because I never know who will
Right.
be impacted by it.
Right.
So it
Kim,
was just
I am so proud of you. So proud of you. When you came out on the Freedom Project, my jaw dropped and I was just like, wow, I don't know many athletes that can own their shit like you have. And to
it
me,
took
that
a lot of it took a lot of
yes,
time to get there, but getting there was just another level of peace that
yeah,
I feel like I deserved. I'm like, I've been through too much
right,
to let other people to let other people shit hold me down. So
yeah,
it was the first time that I was at peace.
yeah,
Um, I was able to let go and move on and be happy.
right.
Like truly happy, like genuinely happy, not
I
a fake
feel that.
smile because when people see
Not
me,
the
I'm
rest.
always smiling.
Yeah,
But it's really because they just don't know like what I've been through, and then
have no idea that you've been walking around holding a beach ball underwater, trying to smile like nothing's going
right.
on. Hey, this is like, yeah,
but
but you now
but
it's genuine. It's a real smile.
yeah,
I
now
thank
it's genuine.
you so
Like
much for sharing and being a part of tonight. And I'm so excited for you in the future. I can't wait to follow your journey and support you in any way I can because I just love you and I love what you've accomplished so far. And so thank you. Thank you for being part of my journey because I've loved getting to know you. It's been an
thank you for having me. It was an honor being on here. Like I'm
honor.
not going to lie, and so thank you.
You're very welcome. We're going to end with a GOAT tip of the week. And the GOAT tip of the week is your middle name. And look at that smile, your nickname, right? It's really smiley because of the smile. Is that right?
Yep.
Well, my GOAT tip of the week is I do you realize that if you just smile in the morning for 30 seconds, it doesn't have to be real, it can just be a fake smile, but if you smile and laugh, it totally changes your outlook for the day. And
Yep.
I want you to try it, and I'm going to try it right now, and I want everybody in the audience to give it a shot. Is I want you to just smile, and what that feels like. It feels great, doesn't it? You
It
want to,
does.
and it
And then
acts,
when you see other people smiling, it makes you
yes,
wonder.
it's
That's why I always smile.
I
So when
love
people look at me, like, if you feel bad, you're gonna smile because you don't want to look at me smiling and have a frown on your face.
exactly. And it's so powerful what it does to us, endorphin wise and all that. So it's like, don't waste our smiles. Use them all the time. Wake
Yeah.
up and smile because that will give you control over your day. So everybody, thanks for having us on the go. No, thanks for Jim. Thanks for being on the go. And I can't wait to see you next week, everybody, and take care.
Oh gosh.
I love